Since its origins in 1832, the story of the British healthcare service has overlooked the vital contribution of African women, valuing the call to Africa but never their experiences upon arrival. But throughout the 20th century, African women have held an important place in the history of medicine and empire, serving and defining generations of British and African history. This is A Hidden History: African Women and the 20th Century British Healthcare Service, Early Women, 1900 to 1949. The early 20th century is defined in the annals of mainstream history as a period of tumultuous and rapid social, political and economic change. Not long after the death of Queen Victoria, the world was shattered by World War I, one of the deadliest conflicts in history, and eclipsed by the rising fight for civil rights. The British health sector was forced to rise to the challenge of contemporary times, as access to healthcare became viewed as a basic human right. First, the sector was revolutionised by the National Insurance Act in 1911. The Act created a system of health insurance for all industrial workers in Great Britain. After this, the establishment of the Royal College of Nursing, a union to support the rights of nurses, was an important step for nurses. This was closely followed by the Nurses Registration Act in 1911, which created an official register for nurses, differentiating between skills and practices and ratifying nursing as a professional organisation. But intertwined within this history are significant stories of African women's migration. Women who would play a part in enforcing these changes and saving the lives of thousands over a century of contributions. The earliest on record is Olaore Green. Born in 1885 in Nigeria, Green trained as a midwife in 1912 before becoming the first black woman to obtain the apothecary certificate from the Pharmaceutical Society of London. She worked in Clapham Maternity Hospital and Soho Eye and Ear Hospital until her departure back to Lagos in 1917. Like Green, Lulu Coote from the Congo made waves as one of the first African nurses. Her education stemmed between the Congo, Wales and Manchester. She completed her training in 1914, after which her skills as a nurse were believed to have taken her all over Britain and the African continent, including Sierra Leone, South Africa and finally Birmingham, where she died in 1964 a retired nurse. As the African presence in Britain began making a more permanent mark, a hub for social events, accommodation, activism and intellectualism emerged. The establishment of the West African Students' Union symbolised the safe haven for West African people in London and Britain, and demonstrated a growing West African community in the UK. At the same time, African women began to expand and occupy many places in the medical field. A fine example of this is Agnes Savage. Extraordinary from a young age, Edinburgh-born Agnes Savage excelled at the Royal College of Music and at the George Watson's Ladies' College, before studying at the University of Edinburgh's Medical School. She won prizes in general proficiency and classwork, in dermatology, and won the Dorothy Gilfillan Memorial Prize for the Best Woman Graduate in 1929. She was also the first woman to achieve an award in forensic science. Finally, following in the footsteps of her father and brother, she became the first African woman to earn a medical degree, graduating with first-class honours from the University of Edinburgh. A few years later in Ireland, Elizabeth Abimbola Awaliyi from Nigeria was the first West African woman to earn a licence from the Royal Society of Medicine and the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin in 1938. She was one of the first African women to become a member of the UK Royal College of Physicians and a member of the UK Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecology, before becoming a diplomat of the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, spanning a career from Lagos, Nigeria to Britain. She was awarded a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, an MBE, as well as given a Nigerian National Honour, Officer of the Order of the Federal Republic. These African women in their various roles defied the odds and paved the way for African women later in this history. But these were not times of racial harmony. In early 20th century Britain, the colour bar determined a series of actions enacted by British employers, institutions and landlords to discriminate against people of colour. Resulting in violence, stereotypes, exclusion, unemployment, homelessness and race riots in 1919. Few hospitals accepted African women to practice medicine. Some include Guy's Hospital, Farnborough Hospital, Clapham Maternity Hospital, Royal Infirmary in Bristol, Walton Hospital in Liverpool, and the General Hospital in Newcastle upon Tyne. There is no doubt that the experiences of African women in this history were challenging, but in the same way makes their story all the more important and inspiring. Still, World War II broke down racial barriers and called on women from across the empire. For example, the Sierra Leonean nurses Abuse Pratt, who qualified as a nurse on the 28th of May 1943 and worked at the Prince of Wales General Hospital, and Josephine Luke, who qualified in June 1940 and worked at the Willesden General Hospital. World War II in particular called on every kind of African woman, including princesses. Princess Tsehai Selassie, born in Ethiopia, was the daughter of the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie. She was celebrated for her training as a nurse probationer and showed an extraordinary desire to be of use. From a young age, she embraced her roles as a princess, delivering a speech to the League of Nations at age 15. She sponsored the creation of the Ethiopian Women's Welfare Work Association before her family were exiled to Bath in Britain in 1936. Whilst here, Princess Tsehai trained to become a nurse and in the same year was accepted to Great Ormond Street Hospital. By 1939, she had trained as a sick children's nurse and transferred between Guy's Hospital and Farnborough Hospital during the war. She tragically died in 1942 of a hemorrhage on her return to Ethiopia, her young life cut short before she was able to accomplish her dreams of building a child hospital in Ethiopia. But other African princesses continued to carry the mantle that Princess Tsehai established. Around the same time, London played host to two African princesses, the Ademola sisters, daughters of a prominent king in the southern region of Nigeria. The first Ademola princess to arrive in Britain was Princess Aderemi Ademola. She qualified as a nurse in 1934 and significantly accompanied by her father, the Alake of Abeokuta, to the coronation of King George VI in May 1937. The second sister, Princess Adenreli Ademola, arrived in Britain in 1935 and after schooling in Somerset worked at Guy's Hospital from 1939 before becoming a registered nurse in 1941. During the war, she trained as a midwife at Queen Charlotte's Maternity Hospital. Not so much is known about these two sisters, but Adenrele was brought to the limelight as the first African nurse to feature in a colonial film unit film, a film called Nurse Ademola, which was broadcast across West Africa. But this film has since been lost, and with it a wealth of history about these African princess nurses. But still, these African princesses hold a significant place in the royal contributions to the World War II effort. As the century progresses, African women continue to spearhead African excellence with rising statuses in the medical profession. Dr. Irene Ighodaro is a glowing example of this rise, stating in her own words, "As Africans, what we want is more of everything, more foresight, more cooperation, more vision, more courage, more faith." Ighodaro, as a writer, activist, and one of the first West African-born women doctors in Britain, made a profound impact upon female representation in healthcare, politics, and activism. Whilst earning a medical degree from Durham University, she became a member of the decontamination squad, treating war casualties before becoming a house officer at the Royal Victoria Infirmary. She also founded the Society for the Cultural Advancement of Africa with her brother in Newcastle in 1943, and went on to found the West African Women's Association in 1946, the first of its kind in Britain. She worked at the New Sussex Hospital for Women and Children in Brighton in 1947, all before her return to Africa in 1949. Still, the excellence continued with these next two examples, spearheaded by the legacy of Agnes Savage. As alumni of the Achimota College, where Savage was a teacher and medical officer, Susan Ofori Atta and Matilda Clerk, as the first of their kinds, continued to make marks on the British medical world. Susan Ofori Atta, the daughter of a Ghanaian chief, was the first female physician in Ghana, or the Gold Coast as it was formerly known. She worked closely with Savage in the sick bay of the Achimota College before completing a course in midwifery in 1935. After 2 years of practicing, she moved to Scotland where she undertook a pre-med course to enter the University of Edinburgh. She was successful and graduated from the Edinburgh Medical School in 1947, becoming the fourth West African woman to earn a medical degree, but the first female doctor in Ghana. Similarly, Matilda Clerk, also born in Ghana in 1916, enrolled in the Achimola School in 1932, where she was dubbed the Dux of the college. She won a scholarship to study medicine in Edinburgh between 1944 and 1949, before achieving a postdoc at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Science, making her the first woman from Ghana to earn a postgraduate medical diploma. Both returned to Ghana after their education, and together, Susan and Matilda became medical officers at the Princess Marie-Louise Children's Hospital in the 1950s. Individually and collectively, they formed truly international reputations. It becomes clear that for many African women, Britain was not only a place to practice medicine, but also its resources and education system was utilised to advance African women in the medical profession, and then transferring these skills and this knowledge to Africa's own healthcare. What's more, each woman helped to establish the place and legacy of African women, their settlement in Britain, and the field and practice of medicine across the empire. But now we reach the epitome of our journey. In 1948, Britain began to formalise its healthcare with the National Healthcare Service, or the NHS, a four-tiered system spreading across Britain which would provide free and comprehensive healthcare for all. Naturally, African women's defining contribution to the British medical service over the first half of the 20th century resulted in one of the first African nurses in the NHS, Africa's own Florence Nightingale. Koforawala Abini Pratt, born in Lagos, Nigeria in 1910, initially began her contribution to society through teaching at a girls' school in Nigeria. But in 1946, she married Olu Pratt and migrated to London, where she trained in midwifery at the Nightingale School at St Thomas's Hospital between 1946 and 1950, during the initialisation of the NHS. She became one of the first of many African nurses to grace the NHS, working at the same time as Irene Igodaro within the NHS. She returned to Lagos in 1954 to become the first matron of College Hospital and established a school of nursing in Ibadan in 1965. For all of her efforts, she was awarded the Florence Nightingale Award in 1973. 1948 marked a turning point for the African diaspora in Great Britain. With the HMS Empire Windrush arriving in Essex, the British Nationalities Act establishing a growing racial consciousness and citizenship in communities, and the NHS becoming a staple of the British society, the stories of African women have often become subsumed within the general story of the African diaspora in Britain. But African women have left a legacy in the British healthcare system defined well before 1948. For the few spoken of here, in the midst of a changing century that has continued to pay homage to the African women who paved the way in British healthcare in the early 20th century.